Hey, everybody, and welcome to Hotspawn Hot Takes first episode. I'm the editor in chief, Sophie, and I'm here with two of my best writers, Lee Jones and Dan Morris. How are you guys doing today?
Yes, all good, thank you.
Yeah,
How you doing?
happy to be here.
Nice, nice. Yeah, all good. I'm on some hotel Wi-Fi here in sunny Lisbon for Blast Open Spring, which is it's pretty good. We had a tough media day yesterday, but it was all good. We got some good interviews in the end.
Nice.
Yeah, you were calling it fine, by the sounds of it.
Literally, I got my flight. I got up at 3 in the morning. My flight was at 6. I arrived in at the Player Hotel in Lisbon at it was like 11:12, and my interview with Brolin was at 11:15, and obviously it was the first time anyone has ever been on time for an interview. So
It's a shame you got
slightly
work as well,
chaotic.
because you're at the airport those kind of times. That's usually when you're allowed a sneaky beer at 4 in the morning, isn't it? But if you got to work, you maybe can't get away with it, can you?
That's it. Croissant and a tea, to be honest. That's where we're at. So, I guess today we've got quite a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about Blast Open. We're going to be talking about Rogue in the LEC. We're going to be talking about Los Ratones. So, I'm going to start with you, Dan. Tell me what your hot take is this week.
My hot take is that this vitality success in Counter-Strike is just not sustainable. Now, I know that people will look at this team and say, right, well, they are by far and away the best CS2 team in the world, and that is absolutely right. But we haven't had an era in Counter-Strike since like 2017 to 2019 with the Astralis era. And I feel like teams are the fans are desperate to jump and look, for the next big era in Counter-Strike. And the gap between Vitality and everyone else at the moment is huge, but it's a different game now. The Astralis era, it lasted 2 years because they sort of reinvented how the game was played. They invented sort of how to anti-strat teams through demo reviews, whereas now the game is more about evolution rather than revolution. And you just can't change the game like you could. And that just means teams will always catch up to you. And I think that is what will happen with Vitality. And I don't think they'll win the major.
Really? Okay. So you don't
Yeah.
think that Rops is the win condition here?
I mean, I think he is the win condition, but I think the fact that the major is in June, whereas last year it was in March, that sort of benefits teams that are looking to sort of peak at the right time. Whereas Vitality, they have just been constantly great, and that just doesn't last forever in Counter-Strike.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why do you think there's such a big gap at the moment, though? Like, why are other teams more inconsistent?
So the floor of Vitality is so high at the moment. Like the sort of problem players, you would say, in the team over the last year, when they haven't really been winning things, they've sort of raised their floor. Like you've got Mezzy, who's playing a few new positions. He has looked so good. You've got Apex, the in-game leader. He is fragging out of his mind. And when you've got those players putting up numbers, other teams can't compete with it. Like the rest of the scene is so inconsistent at the moment, and Vitality have found the secret formula. But like I say, you just can't do that for like a year. In the game nowadays, teams will find the answer, and if you don't come up with answers to their answers, that's where you'll fall off. And I think that for me is what will happen with Vitality.
I think so, because I guess with a lot of other teams, the IGL is generally not fragging as high as the other players, but it really seems like Apex is actually he's hitting it with the best of them, and he's just really, really carrying in a way that you don't often see IGLs do because they're so busy calling.
Yeah. I mean, he's lucky. So in the team that sort of he plays in, he gets quite a few good positions. But he gets that because over the years he sort of earned that. And back in the day, he was a fragger. He's sort of rolling back the years at the minute. He's 21 again. But he's earned those spots, and he's finally putting up the numbers to sort of justify it. And I think the team as well. You've obviously got Zywoo, like in number 3 player last year. That is the lowest placement since his rookie year. You can tell that hasn't sat well with him, because for me right now he is the best in the world over Donk.
I think like Donk is a prodigy in the way that like it was his rookie year just last year, really. But now he's playing with the big boys and it's tough. It's like I was speaking to Zywoo yesterday and I asked him, if somebody is going to beat you, who do you think it's going to be? And he still said he thinks anybody could beat him. He named Spirit specifically and said he, even after that Katowice finals, he still thinks Spirit can beat them. Yeah.
I mean, Spirit are very interesting in that their like win condition literally hinges on this kid. Like if he doesn't, if you've got a best of 3 and he doesn't drop 60 kills, like they just don't win. Like because the fragging isn't there for the rest of them, and you saw that in the Katowice final. For like the first time, it looked like he felt pressure, Donk, and that was something we'd never seen in like 12 months. And they just felt a bit, and Vitality just absolutely dunked on them. And to be honest, I didn't expect that. I did expect Spirit to win. And that sort of set the tone for the year ever since.
Absolutely. Because I think Vitality, they're really pulling in a consistency in a way that a lot of the other teams aren't at the moment. Obviously, we've seen FaZe. Like, FaZe are really struggling at the moment. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
We've said Na'Vi. The Mongols have had a poor showing at Blast Open. So, like, I guess my question is, how are Vitality keeping this consistency and every other team in the scene isn't?
To be honest, again, I bring it back to individuals. Like with you look at Na'Vi. Last year, they needed JL to be like a top 5 player, and sort of when he was brought into the team, that was never his role. He was never expected to be that good. And they had the same thing with Wonderful. They get a young Orpa. He looks amazing. He sort of fell off this year. So again, it comes down to individuals and how they deal with certain things. You look at the Mongols. To be honest, I think they could win a trophy this year. But the main issue they've got is they get to stage and one of them just absolutely pisses the pants. Like, and it's always the difference. FaZe positions aren't quite working at the moment.
Yeah.
Liquid, I would say, could be a contender, but I mean, rumours are they're making a change. I don't know if that'll be confirmed by the time this is out, but they're bringing in Shuhei, so they're bringing in a real IGL. They're actually addressing one of their main complaints before the major, but yeah, it's a different issue with every team. As I say, that you said FaZe, I expected them to be amazing with Elige because I think he is a great player. He's been around for 6-7 years. Man, he just has not worked. Like, I think he could, but whether FaZe will give him the time is another question. There's a few changes you could make in that FaZe team, to be honest.
Okay, you're gonna have to name them. Who else?
Well, I think you could replace Rain because he just shows up for the major. He's an absolute major merchant, and he is an amazing player. And he's a veteran, and he's been on FaZe for I don't know how long, probably 8-9 years now. But everyone's got a shelf life. Brokey, he's not the same player. I really have not liked what I've seen from Brokey for 12 months. Which is a long time for an AWPer to go missing. And when he shows up still, but it's just becoming fewer and far between the matches. But yeah, like I said, this inconsistency plagues the scene. Falcons are just wasting everyone's time. Like, they're so desperate to make a success of Counter-Strike, which just makes it all the funnier that they're really struggling to. Because it shows that money can't buy everything.
And I think that's exactly what they did with Dota. That's what they did with that Dota roster. And then that roster has done amazingly in Dota. Yeah. Well, they were the best team in the world sort of last year. And now this year, It's the same thing. They're just falling off a cliff.
Oh, really? I knew
yeah,
they
I mean,
won
they're still
some things in Dota.
exactly. Yeah, they won majors. They won ESL ones. Still making playoffs every time, but
Yeah.
it's a different dominance now. Lee, do you ever get stuff like this in Valorant with players who are just inconsistent? They're falling off.
I'm probably too new to Valorant to say, but my native game being League of Legends, in there it certainly happens. I mean, I imagine it happens in every game, and it can be sometimes it can be weird to see why, because you get the idea of the young 20s or the teenagers being the fresh ones, and you get to 25 and your hands fall off, which shouldn't really be the case. But then I think if I'm going to just answer for League of Legends instead, at least there, where it's a game that changes so much, it does happen a lot there. So a big one I'd say in Europe was Perks, who was the mid laner for G2 for many years. He was, before Caps came around, probably was inarguably the best European player ever. He shared some time with Caps of both of them being at the top at the same time and even playing together on a role swap. The last 2 years, Perks has fallen off a cliff. He had time with Team Heretics last year. That was the last time he was in the LEC, and it was completely gone. And with his example, his coach had did an interview about it afterwards, and he basically said it's to do with play styles and things. So it can be sometimes like that where it's the ability you had isn't even gone. It's just the ability that you need changes, and what you were good at before doesn't really work anymore, the style of play and stuff like that. So it certainly happens, yeah.
That's super.
Shall I drop in with a hot take? Because I'm bored listening to you guys and not being able to say nothing. But actually, you'll like it as well as CS players.
Okay.
Or CS fans.
Hit me.
My hot take right now is that there's this discourse going on about Valorant being too ability focused, and it basically feels like the pros are asking for it to just be CS. That's my hot take. Valorant pros are wanting CS right now.
Yeah.
So this whole discourse happened with so Tens, who was one of the most famous Valorant players, and he retired last year, but he's a streamer now full time. And on stream the other day, he was basically complaining about it. The matches are way too ability focused, and then he even went back to the original reveal video by Riot before it was even called Valorant, and it was Project L. And there's a quote in it where they're saying, "Oh, this is going to be a game with precise gunplay mechanics or precise gunplay or something like that." And then that has gone massive now. Everyone's saying, "Yeah, Riot themselves are saying it was gunplay. It's just all abilities now." And it's basically this whole discourse of what do we do about there being too many abilities in Valorant? And people proposing not to have abilities on cooldown. So basically, you can do a couple of smokes around, but not having stuff recharged throughout the round, so you can just spam it and force retakes of sites and things. Because it's also gotten to a point at the moment where defense. So I was covering a game in VCT Pacific last week of PaperX against DRX, and it went to 3 maps, and basically every map no team could defend, and literally PRX's coach said it afterwards, no team can defend, just because the point that abilities are at and the way the meta is at right now, it's just way too easy to just spam your abilities and hold sites and things. So I thought you guys might enjoy that one. They want Counter-Strike really deep down, I think. I
mean, it makes a lot of sense to me, because when you look at half the Valorant scene's Wikipedia page, they've got a retired from Counter-Strike in 2019. Yeah, Tens as well. He played for Cloud9, Counter-Strike 2019. And obviously with Valorant, am I right in saying that after a few bullets, the sprays become random?
Yeah, I don't think it's as precise. And actually, I think fucking hell, I've completely forgotten what I was going to say now. Go on, you keep going.
No, it just makes a lot of sense to me, but just based on the fact that how many sort of Valorant pros came from CS.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I do like the idea of the abilities sort of not recharging, because in a way that almost makes it a little bit more like Counter-Strike, in that the abilities would become more like utility.
Yeah, so it was Chronicle from Fnatic who he was on that kind of proposed that, and yeah, his argument was like maybe smokes and things can recharge, so you're not just like limited to one at the start and kind of screwed after that. But yeah, I also think it's a thing that's maybe even like pro specific, because I think as a general player it's fine, like it's fun to have those mechanics and so on. One thing I would say is this is maybe like as someone that's like reasonably new to Valorant and started following it in like the last year or two, that getting into it as a viewer is so much more difficult than Counter-Strike, for example. You watch Counter-Strike, it's like, oh, he clicked on his head, therefore he's doing good and he's a good player. But like the visual clarity and stuff for viewers can be like a bit of a mess. I guess it's like the same problems like Overwatch had back in the day and stuff like that as well. Where yeah, I think it's like quite a competitive specific thing where yeah, when you're playing it and there's like one smoke and a flash gets chucked in front of you, it's not the end of the world. But when you're trying to watch the whole map and watch things, and yeah, it can be a bit of a mess at times.
I completely agree. So I do watch Valorant. I've mostly just watched Game Changers, and then ever since Floor went up to VCT, I started watching VCT because I am the #1 Floor fangirl. I absolutely love her, and
I got
I
map
remember.
of Heretics yesterday.
I know, I saw it. I was so excited. Oh my god. She's like, they're never beating the Floor and Friends allegations, like for sure. But I was watching an interview with her once, and she was being asked why like how she's so good. Like, how do you get to be so good? And she's like, just click heads. Like, it's not about the abilities, it's about the gunplay. And for her, that was what seemed to make the difference. And it's like, if that's what Floor's saying, you should probably listen, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think they will sort of address these issues?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's because it also kind of came out of nowhere as well. It wasn't like there was a specific change and then everyone was pissed off about it. So it's not like there was a certain thing that it seems obvious that they need to revert or something. It was literally just like, yeah, Tens on stream just kind of dropped it and then it just went nuclear. So I'm not really sure, because especially like the proposed changes of like removing cooldowns and stuff, that is such an overwhelming change to the game that like I can't imagine they're just going to do that just because people are annoyed on Twitter and that. So I'm not really sure. We'll see what happens, I think.
That is really interesting.
I imagine something will change, like minor, at least for the fact of like in pro play where attack versus defense seems so weighted one side at the moment. Like something will probably happen with that, but yeah, not so sure about anything so like fundamental.
Do the fans have any sort of like outrage or upset about this sort of thing, or do they prefer, like, what's the general consensus in the community?
I think so. I feel like the consensus is, yeah, to a degree, is well, especially when it's their favorite streamer saying it. Obviously, they're going to agree to some extent. But it's also the fact that I think there's the feeling that it does take away of the gunplay a bit. Like if it's so utility focused and to do with like holding down sites, and we've got so much utility, we can make it like impossible for retakes and things. Then I feel like the feeling is to a point it kind of stops there actually being so much clicking of heads, because you're just trying to use the utility as much as you can and like abuse it to the point where you avoid that, or at least you avoid like skill checks and things. So yeah, I think I'm pretty sure the fans mostly agree as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting with the cooldowns, because they just recharge over the rounds, but with other like MOBAs, I guess if that's what we're gonna equate it to, I assume this is the same in League of Legends, but in Dota there is just a timed cooldown, and then a spell that's like particularly game changing will have a much longer cooldown, like a black hole from Enigma or something like that. That's interesting. So I guess I've been sat here for the last like 2-3 minutes trying to think about how we're going to segue into League of Legends. I've got nothing.
I've got one that,
do it. Let's just rip it off.
That can go back to CS. And imagine we were talking about CS, and we'll use this as a segue now.
Okay.
So it's going to work if we actually don't segue from what we're talking about. Obviously, Na'Vi is big in CS.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are rumors and reports that they are in talks to buy Rogue's slot in the LEC or take it over in some way. There's no no leaks on prices or what the deal looks like. But as mainly a fan of League of Legends for the most part, what would it be Na'Vi coming into a league? Like, what is the stature of an org like that?
I mean, they are absolutely massive in CS. They are, I would say, probably the most supported team in the entire scene. They've never missed a major, not once. They're a likable org. They're Ukrainian. I don't know what sort of composition of a team they would be able to make in League of Legends.
So yeah, the rumor is that they'll take over Rogue's team that is there already. So they basically have whatever players are there, barring maybe if they do a couple of changes. But it's not likely they'd be able to like do a complete redo straight away.
Yeah, but they're there to compete. They're not there to just take part. Mm-hmm. Like they like to win. I know they had a league team. Was it 2017?
Yeah, way back in there. I think they were never like. I'm not sure they were ever in the LCS or anything though. I'm not sure if it was like tier 2 or something. But
yeah,
I will say from the league community's perspective, I think even if there's people that don't know much about Na'Vi, a lot of people will be glad to see the back of Rogue. Being completely honest.
Why?
So they were a team when the LEC went into franchising in 2019. Rogue was a team that didn't exist before. It was like a, sort of like how, what are they called? Overactive Media have got like, they had Spliced, it became Mad Lions, it's now Movistar Coin. They're like a media brand, like media company that has different ventures things. So it's basically from one of these like venture capital companies with like a bunch of backers, like Steve Aoki's name was on it, and that somehow was like the big thing. So it was one of these like, we've got a bunch of people that will put in a bunch of rich people will put in some of their money to buy this slot and will make this team. And basically what's happened is that for the most part they've never been particularly competitive. So especially the first couple of years they were like pretty dire. In 2022 they ended up winning a split, so they had a really good team. Obviously, they won the split. But then they've had like weird GMing decisions where that team that won the LEC over the following 2 years, they just sort of let it disband sometimes for no reason. Like they would trade players like in clear downgrades. And apart from that one split where they won, they've kind of just been in like the bottom 2 or 3 pretty much the whole time. This year, there was actually a bit more excitement around them, because essentially what they did is their off-season process this year was basically do fuck all, wait till every other team has made their whole rosters, and they literally just picked up like a few of the free agents. And it obviously looked like they didn't have much strategy, but actually the players they picked up made it look like they'd be a bit more exciting. Like they had some players that are more known for like sort of more aggressive play styles and things, and you'd think it would just be, even if they're still not very good, at least a bit more entertaining. They've actually ended up still not very good, and it's actually not even that fun to watch as well. So I think the LEC community, I think, are not going to be particularly sad to see them go, if I'm being honest.
That's so.
Sorry.
Oh, go on. No, you go.
Yeah, I mean, getting a team in like Na'Vi, I would expect it to be the exact opposite in terms of they would be looking to compete. So that is definitely a lot more exciting for the scene.
Yeah.
We had actually Rogue in CS a long time ago.
Oh, really?
But I think they I might be thinking of someone else, but I'm pretty sure they had a Counter-Strike team.
Maybe they did. But one thing as well, it will be interesting to see what happens with their mid laner, Larson. So they've had the same mid laner for almost the whole time in the LEC, so probably the last 4 or 5 years. He was obviously there when they won it in 2022, and he at that time was considered like a top 2 or 3 mid laner in Europe. And just for context, in League of Legends, the mid lane is the most important role as well. So like to be the best mid laner you're basically always the best player, is the best mid laner. So he was like a top 2 or 3 mid laner. As the team kind of crumbled, he'd already stayed there, and everyone kind of felt bad for him. Like, he's clearly very good. The team is completely rubbish around him, and it's like wasting his career. But then 1 or 2 years ago, he re-signed on like a 3-year contract, which kind of seemed a bit mental, like given what the state of the team had been like. and he's kind of lost that positive feeling that the community had now, where they're saying, oh, he's a paycheck stealer, he's just happy to sit in the crap team and be one of the highest paid players in the league. There are some rumors that he'd been told previously, like, re-sign, but we're going to sell, and then they're going to build a new team around you, so that's why he re-signed. That's a rumor. So it'd be interesting to see, like, if they keep him, because I think he'll still have another year or two left, even if Na'Vi take over the contract. It would be interesting to see, like, if they build a good team around him, if, like, he can kind of prove himself still as being a top mid laner, or if it just continues to the point where, like, no one believes in him anymore, basically. So that would be an interesting one.
Well, I think if anyone could do that, it would probably be Na'Vi, right? They're just, as we say, complete professionals. Every single time I interview them, I mean, God love them, they're really serious. They take it so seriously, but super professional, and, you know, the record speaks for itself. They don't have the same success in Dota that they do in CS, but they are playing in Eastern Europe, which is an incredibly competitive region. You know, if you have one slot, Team Spirit are going to get it every single time. So it's a shame for them, but...
Let's see. I'm going to do another segue, actually, as well.
Nice.
So I'll do the host job for you, Sophie. You're welcome. But, so with Rogue selling and Na'Vi potentially coming in a vacuum, like on its own, that would be great news for LEC fans. One thing that I feel like maybe makes the news slightly less perfect is Los Ratones, Cadrill's. So Cadrill, this massive league streamer, he used to be a player, and then he was an analyst. Now he's a co-streamer, and he gets like 200,000 concurrent views when his own team plays. So he basically built his own team in Tier 2 that everyone wants to see in the LEC, essentially. So that's maybe the one downside, is people would probably prefer if it was Los Ratones taking over Rogue slot.
On the rare occasion that I watch League of Legends, I do watch Cadrill's stream. It's just easier as someone who, like, I don't know shit about that game, you know, so it does make it better and easier.
Yeah, so essentially what's happened, he's made this team, and it comes off like a bit of a tradition that's happened in the last few years, or not a tradition, but this, in Tier 2 in League of Legends, there's been a couple of times now where basically a famous streamer has made a team and kind of used their brand to put it into a team and have a massive fan base, like, on day one, essentially. So it happened with Carmine Corp, which was a team from French streamer Kameto. That team got absolutely enormous. They stomped Tier 2, and then they eventually got a slot in the LEC. The thing that makes it difficult getting into LEC is that it's franchised. So you have to either buy a slot that someone else has, partner with another team, which there was another example of, which I'll get to in a second, or like do some sort of like merger, like where maybe you pay for half the slot or something and use your brand, some weirdness like that. The problem is the initial buy-in was like 10 million euros. A lot of the ones that have been resold for more than that. So if Cadrill wants to buy in, it's a lot of money. But this Carmine Corp did it. They managed it. Then Ibai, a Spanish streamer, he made a team called Koi. They didn't stomp Tier 2, but they were absolutely enormous. They were putting on massive stadium events. This is where it's maybe a cautionary tale for Cadrill. So our good old friends Rogue, for 1 year, partnered with Koi and used Koi's brand, but Rogue ran the team, essentially. So it just became Koi. That lasted for a year, and then that relationship completely broke down. There was like maybe some disputes about who should have been paying for what, and like weirdness like that. And it broke up, and that slot went back to Rogue, and then Koi eventually got back in again, but this time with Overactive Media, which was Splice and their Mad Lions, and now it's Koi. So you kind of got this thing of, yes, it would be great to see Los Ratones in the LEC and see them boost it for starters, because they've got a massive fan base. But for Cadrill's issue is that it's going to be hard to find the right way in, because either he needs a lot of money, and streamer with 200k viewers, probably he's got a decent amount in the bank account. I'm not sure he'd be willing to cough up 10 million euros plus out of his own pocket, even if he could. But if he does partner with another team that's there already, obviously you've got to do your due diligence and be comfortable that you're with the right partner, because when Koi did it, it didn't work out for him. So it's difficult.
Sorry.
And that's another maybe hot take that I can drop in as well, is that basically he made this team this year. He put it into the NLC, which is like the Northern League, which is like UK plus Nordic countries. Like, it's a bit of a weird merge that they did a few years ago. They won that easily because they've basically got a team of old, not only just former pros, but they've got like Rekkles, who is literally one of the best ever European players playing in Tier 2. They've got a bunch of former LEC players, and
Is that
Cage
the
was
guy
the coach.
that I thought it's pronounced Rekkles?
That probably would be him. You could do that if you. I could imagine that happening if you've not heard the name before, based on how it's written. But
Spelled Rekkles, okay.
tell him. I'm not the one that made it. Sorry.
True.
But basically, they walked the NLC. That got them to EMEA Masters, which is like a Champions League style tournament for the Tier 2 like countries, basically. And then they won that on their first try as well. So my kind of hot take there really is basically that it would have been better if they didn't win it straight away, because their problem now is that until they get to the LEC, assuming that is going to happen, because there's no guarantees obviously, they've completed Tier 2 in the first 2 months of making the team. So there is this massive hype around it, but they're going to have to think of ways to like keep it interesting now, because there are 3 splits in the year, and in the first split they've won everything possible at their level. So they've got to kind of figure out how to keep it going. Otherwise, it's just the same thing going to happen 3 times in a row now. And if they don't get into LEC, then it will happen another 3 times in a row next year as well. So they've got to kind of figure out the direction, I suppose, if they don't actually get a pathway to the LEC. But that's the fun of franchising, I suppose. You're not annoyed that you don't have that in CS? Well, you got like the sort of partner program thing, right?
We did until literally this year. We've just binned it off, which has allowed all the big tournament organisers like PGL to sort of come back in. Because before it was just ESL and Blast. They had a whole monopoly on the whole thing, and teams were like selling slots for next to nothing. It was crazy. But personally, I'm made up to see it go. Teams, I imagine, not so much. Some teams certainly. But like last year, when we knew, teams didn't, like, it wasn't going to be a thing anymore. Teams were just pawning off their slots like nothing, just for that extra injection of cash. But in terms of Los Ratones, has there been actually any rumblings in terms of how they're actually planning to get into the LEC? Because, like you say, there are so few ways in. I'm just interested to hear if there have been any rumours.
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, there's no rumours of an actual concrete way in. Cagel himself has outright said it though, so it's not like we're not guessing as to whether they would like to do it. Like when they won EMEA Masters on stream, they interviewed him straight after the win, and he was talking about wanting to be in the LEC, wanting to go to Worlds one day. Which he has to be in the LEC to do. So he's not keeping a secret of it, like the fact that they want to do it. And to be fair, in terms of a partnership angle, I'm sure I can't imagine he'd find it difficult to find a team that would want to partner with him, because his brand is so massive, and there are so many teams where you've got obviously like your G2s and Fnatics that are massive and they've got a huge fan base. But in pretty much all of these franchise leagues, you get a couple of teams around the bottom where there's no one really cares that much. Like, they don't have hardcore fans, and I'm sure they would, bite Cagel's hand off to get Los Ratones logo on their shirt instead. So I'm sure if he wants to like partner up, he's got his suitors, but again, he's just got to make sure he's making the right choice, basically.
Interesting. Well, it seems like we intended to spend a lot of time talking about Lisbon, and we spent more time talking about Valorant and League, but I'm not mad about it. I think this is great.
But to be honest, the Lisbon stuff, like, there's not really been much going on. Vitality has stumped everyone.
Well, but what did we say would happen? Exactly what just happened. That's exactly just where CS is at the moment. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and like and subscribe.
So yeah.
All right, yeah, thanks guys.